How do I go about? Okay. So we are say now we need to talk about say how alternatively we can think about affordable housing. Whenever we talk about affordable housing, this picture comes to our mind that probably we are talking about people who are residing in slums. They are scattered in the city at various places, maybe near the railway track or near the drainage channels, or they are just say squatting on some land, and they are having a particular kind of a housing that they have say devised for themselves, and this is say out of say some kind of a temporary material which is say sourced as a recycled say waste and has been put into as a housing. But people in this housing, they don't seems to be say uh, very you can say concerned. They wherever they are right now, they appear to be engaging themselves into some livelihood, and they want to say engage themselves meaningfully so that they can sustain themselves. These kinds of people, no, to whom we tend to say club into a particular kind of a definition to which we call slums, but alternatively we can look at it as informal neighborhoods which have sprung up because of say not being able to attend their housing requirement through the formal channels. These numbers, no, they are significant, and they are so much so significant that they call for our attention, and they are to the tune of say one third of the mankind, like the whole population of the world. They are residing in these kinds of settlements, and that is a cause of concern to us, that they should be able to say be in a house which is more safe, secure, and durable, and is offering them the opportunities to grow. But how do we explain and these kinds of housing? So we have to revisit that what are the purposes which are served by housing, and what is meant by the housing when we perceive, and what is meant by the housing when the intended user group perceives it. All of you must be aware of Maslow's need hierarchy that was used for say understanding the behavior of industrial workers, and way back it was intended to explain the say motives or the basic needs of those industrial workers. But this very much can be say employed uh, in explaining the kind of housings that exist in the urban fabric. So when you have say looked at the pictures that I have shown you above, those say shelters, they are quintessential in nature. And when they are quintessential in nature, they are basically intended to serve the physiological needs, wherein it is a bare minimum kind of a uh, shelter, which is intended to ward them from vagaries of nature. Means it is not fully protecting them, but it is sheltering them from that, say, change in the climate, change in weather, rains, and likewise. So, at a very, say, initial state, the housing is intended to serve this need. But when we look at the people for whom we are, say, intending to provide or, say, think of housing, we should also understand that their concerns right now are largely associated with to sustain their lives in terms of be able to feed themselves, so that uh, they they are having say uh, be able to sustain their life. When most of the people they are say packed at this particular say space in their development continuum, then the kind of housing that we perceive will have to be a bit different from the way we are perceiving housing, right? At the other level, like until unless there say these needs are met, people think less on the higher order. So the first job for them is to say sustain their lives, but when they are say being able to feed themselves, then they think that the housing should also provide a sense of security to them, wherein this sense of security implies some kind of predictable behavior, predictable patterns into our living environment. It is basically more to do with how to deal with uncertainty. But as we are aware that majority of the people who are residing in the kind of settlements that we have seen above, they are plagued by this very insecurity, right? So they don't have predictable incomes. They say barely get say 20 days of a job in a month's time. They may lose this job on the count of probably their health, maybe lack of access to the job opportunity, or maybe say not being able to say in not being able to secure the job likewise. So the livelihoods and the predictable incomes, they are very closely associated with the idea of housing. Once these things are attended, and when these things reflect into housing, in the housing, it is more about, say, a sense of community, the familiarity with the people around, the acceptability, which will lead us to the higher order of need, which is the sense of belonging, that you belong to certain community, that you are, say, surrounded with familiar people, that there is say, there are, say, predictable rituals, patterns, and uh, more of acceptability as a whole. Now, majority of the architectural interventions that we see in the realm of housing, until unless it is a public housing, they serve the upper two needs, where architects serve very well. Means they are, say, exercising their creativity, being able to provide a house to say differentiate within the community, and also like showing the say the status of a person in a community, and so on and so forth. And at the topmost level, we find that a house is also a place which helps us realize our potential, and we are able to realize various avenues. It is the outlook is say uh, philanthropic. There's so many say uh, greater say values that are associated with kinds of housing that can encourage this kind of a setup. So one has to revisit and look at that our user group for whom we intend to provide housing, that to affordable housing, then we must say check that what are their preferences, what are their perceptions, in what stage of say development continuum they are, and what are those specific requirements of the people for whom we intend to design affordable housing. So housing becomes one of a concern, and we find that amongst the say total housing shortage that has been computed, arising because of maybe uh, say population growth, maybe the dilapidated housing stock, maybe because of say our choice of defining the adequacy of housing, maybe say few other concerns. But broadly speaking, the housing as it has been computed in the government policy is based upon the income groups. And then this technical group of the 11th 5-year plan, they at that point of time computed that the majority of the housing shortage lies in the lowest income quintile. And we have not been able to attend the housing shortage here. The another reason for this increased housing shortage is that the people who are into the lowest, say, rung of the economic ladder, these are the people who are marginal farmers either, or they are marginal workers, and they do not have job opportunities at their, say, native places, that they choose to come to cities. And because this is a very, say, dynamic kind of a setup, it is not easy to predict that how many people will come to which place, and uh, like what would, say, would be their composition, that we fall short of estimating actually the number of people who would be adding into our cities. But largely speaking, the the growth rate of population in slums or informal neighborhoods is twice as much as the population of the rest of the city, right? So they are growing at twice the growth rate. This is one concern, and therefore this gap between the demand for housing and the supply of housing is here to stay. Our efforts can be to bridge this gap. So we chose a particular kind of a housing to which we called affordable housing, and the ministry chose to define this housing with certain definition, in which they are concerned about the area, which is a habitable space that needs to be there, and also relating it with their paying capacity vis-a-vis either rent or for, say, affording the house itself. So you must be aware by now that there are certain space norms which are given, and then there are certain, say, disposable incomes which are mentioned, which typically says that it should be lesser than 30% of the gross monthly income. Similarly, other than the government, then there are, say, research institutions, or say, uh, varied, say, uh, research groups, as well as, say, market, the institutions which take up, say, market studies, and so on and so forth, that they choose to define the affordable housing. And at this, they are categorizing the income levels. This income level, maybe, say, you can see that it is a dynamic entity. What is the income level which has been specified, say, some 8 years ago, when it would be increasing, say, at the inflation rate, you can add to that, and you will come to know that key, say, 1.5 lakh, say, to, say, some 8 years ago, will turn out to be something around, say, double or 2.5 times this today. So two independent parameters are there. One, that there is, say, space, and then there is the disposable income. But this is the income which is, say, correlated with the affordability. Even further, say you must be aware that there's another say organization called John Lang LaSalle. They took up the research, and then they chose to define affordable housing also along with the provision of basic amenities and then the cost of the house. Now they also understood that this housing is also required to be corroborated with the location where it is, and therefore these are, say, they chose to define it in the form of minimum volume of habitation, provision of basic amenities, the cost of the house, and the location of the house. Having, say, understood this, we must be aware that who will take responsibility, or like what is our idea of scaling the housing supply. So there are two kinds of paradigms which are operative in the say policy domains. One is that of a provider, wherein the goal is of providing houses for reducing the housing deficits and improve the quality of houses. Then the public authorities or the formal or private developers have the control over the production of houses. As we understand that if we choose to provide, it means that all the resources are required to be marshaled by the intending authority or the person, is a this organization, and even the governments are falling short of the resources to provide houses for every one of them. So lately, this kind of a, say, paradigm is progressively going out of favor. The another one is that of a supporter, and in this supporter paradigm, they policymakers think that it is better to be more realistic in defining the adequate housing, in assessing the existing housing stock, and in management of resources, which include, say, land, labor, skills, services, utilities, materials, and money. But then how this, say, paradigm is operative, we go further and we try to understand that there are, say, key characteristics of these paradigms, wherein, as I told you, that in provider kind of a paradigm, the things are centralized. We visualize something of a, say, a central organization which is responsible for everything pertaining to housing. And in this, we would find that uh, there is a sector-wise development activities for ease of management. There are single function projects. We tend to think in terms of standards, and housing is seen as one of the means to fuel the economy. In the supporter paradigm, it is a bit different in terms of that they intend to allocate resources to organize or to promote house building by the people themselves. And then they tend to align our, say, regulatory environment and the production systems towards this. So it is more pertaining to a context specific kind of an intervention rather than one solution fit for all. When we move further, then we look at that what methods are being employed in these paradigms. So when we look at the provider kind of a paradigm, we can see that it is, say, more about large housing projects, and then say focus on to how to build faster, and then it's more about, say clearances and then redevelopment and like. And it is more about, say, interventions into housing as a system where it is a some construction practice and we are improvising upon the individual aspects of housing, and then the goal is the faster or speedier construction. Whereas in the support kind of a paradigm, here it is, say, interventions are very at a small scale. So there is a community, we are enabling this community, and then people in the community, they are building incrementally, and it is more about taking stock of what is available to us, how to build on what is available to us, rather than committing a fresh kind of resources. So you would find at one end, in the provider kind of a paradigm, we tend to gear towards industrialized building systems, and then there are certain rigid planning, say, environments. Things are visualized as projects, and master plans tend to serve as, say, one of the means to, say, promote uh, housing. On the other end of the scale, where the supporter paradigm is there, these are geared towards, say, housing options. It is, say, instructive in nature, like, uh, say, through guidebooks, guidelines, tools, self-help methods, and, say, enhancing the skill set by training people into technical aid centers, say, forging, say, relationship with the community uh, to whom we want to improve. Likewise, these are the some of the components of uh, support paradigm. So what do we find, that who are the people involved into this kind of a paradigm? So we find that consultants invariably have a role to play in either kind of a, say, paradigm, and government agencies also have role to play, but it is the focus that would change. And down the ladder, to, say, forge relationship with the community to whom we want to improve, we find, say, intermediary organizations that can be in terms of community groups, they can be tenant organizations, they can be NGOs, they can be non-profit and voluntary organizations. Likewise. So there is a, say, shift from a centralized kind of approach to a diversified approach. And therefore, as many contexts, that many specific solutions emerge. But there are some tying, say, you can say, principles based on which we can build. So there are some major aspects of support paradigm. It is more about, say, hello. Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the major aspects in support paradigm are three, and these are, say, flexibility, participation, and enablement. We will see that what this means. And when we talk about, say, flexibility, it is in deciding about the dwelling sizes, dwelling types, and dwelling mix in the families to whom we intend to attend. So as you've seen above, that we packaged it in terms of a floor space. But within the same floor space exist numerous possibilities, right? At this point, when we say we imagine a housing solution in form of some kind of an apartment, right? And there are certain typologies which are, say, advocated, maybe say walk-up kinds of apartments, or maybe at some another place, we find that some high-rise constructions are being done. But soon they grow out of favor because they do not help, say, the requirement of the families which belong to the lowest economic ladder in terms of their growth requirements. So they may choose it as a, either they do away with the solution, or they choose it uh, as a, say, partial, say, fulfillment of their requirements. Because when you would look at the photographs that I had shared you at the start of the presentation, even in that kind of a, say, a bare minimum kind of a shelter, there is some space which is intended for spillover, that there's some space which is needed to be integrated with the habitable space to meet their livelihood requirements. So if we are not, say, able to understand the this, say, dynamic of their life, probably we intend to, say, provide a very, you can say, very normal, it is a approach of, say, fixing the problem with certain norms, right? We are also aware of the examples like, say, Aranya Township, where there is diversity of housing mix that has been attempted. At the same time, in the flexibility, uh, we should be able to include that sense of freedom among options, no? So we are required to gear our solutions to fit individual needs and aspirations. Maybe it is pertaining to the space, maybe it is pertaining to the finance, maybe it is pertaining to the method of ownership, and at some other level, maybe the management of housing. Then also, the support paradigm advocates that the community for whom you intend to plan, we have to include that community into decision making. So the objective of community participation is to identify alternative institutional arrangements. It is not like, say, the like sectoral kind of approach, that there is a planner, there is an architect, there is a civil engineer, that there is some government official, like that. They might be needed, they would be needed, but then who will have that sense of ownership, and how the community is engaged into decision making? That is where the participation becomes important. So all the time one has to be aware of the acceptability of the solutions that are being proposed, and they are sorted with the community for whom we intend to intervene. Without their participation, one would find, say, less acceptability of the solutions. So there would exist the cases where the more and more housing is being built, yet there are lot many, say, housing that is lying vacant, and still the housing demand is not, say, attended. So uh, somewhere we have to, say, think about the participation of the user group into decision making. Then the third aspect of enablement, it is a third aspect, and it is promoting, say, spontaneity, improvisation, and incrementalism. See, in, say, the housing that is intended for, say, maybe higher income groups or maybe middle income group, at that point of time, they see their total requirement, and then accordingly, with their affordabilities, they make choices and they settle uh, into a particular kind of housing. So they tend to think all their housing requirement at one go because of the affordability. On the other hand, uh, the people for whom we are, say, advocating a particular kind of a housing, we have to think that all their housing requirement they can not meet at the outset, and therefore there has to be a house for them which allows them to grow incrementally. Like when the more say typically housing additions happen when the say the kids are married, and likewise, so their expansion requirements, they are met incrementally, they cannot be met at one go. So this is one kind of a, say, paradigm which has been advocated to scale the housing supply. The other thing that we have to see is that the people in the lowest income quintile are residing in, say, informal neighborhoods, and they are part of the city. If we choose to think of it as a some kind of a blight, or say some kind of a say burden onto the city, that kind of a, say, outlook is favored out. It is not, say, acceptable. Now, slums, they have been accepted as a part and parcel of the city. It is understood that they serve certain functions in the city, and that their presence is integral, or say essential, for the sustenance of the city, because it is this labor force which is meeting some, say, requirement of, say, fueling the productive function of the city. So we cannot do away with it, we have to accept them. And therefore one of the, say, ways in which we can think of affordable housing is to rethink the slums, or in other words, informal neighborhoods, and then find ways to integrate with the rest of the city. And at the same time, we can see that there are numerous dimensions to this. So there is a physical dimension, there is a economic dimension to it, there is a social dimension to it. There ought to be infrastructure pertaining to it. There ought to be some institution in place. It has got some environmental dimension, some ecological dimension, right? And right now, we have only classified housing pertaining to, say, according to the income groups. But we have very, say, very much have neglected the social dimension of it. And we have neglected, say, some ecological dimension of it. Likewise, until unless we see housing as a system, which is a subsystem of the urban system, and in this, we are talking about a particular kind of a housing. So all these dimensions are required to be rethought. So it is the interrelationship of these various subsystems that, when understood, we will be able to, say, attend housing in a greater detail. So there is some interdependence and they are interrelated. If we have to revisit that what is their picture of these aspects, basically based upon the paradigms that we have chosen. And therefore the support paradigm is more responsive to visualizing the problem holistically. So one can think in terms of a planning model wherein there are varied aspects which are there, and the existing housing stock which is there in the slums, it has been say studied, and then we understand that what are those say control parameters which are say operative in slums. Based on that, we choose say policy, its goal and objectives, and subsequently the projects are formulated. From those projects the programs evolve and these programs are implemented. And when we are say implementing these programs, they go as a feedback and then we reform our perspective. This is some say you can say cyclic exercise, iterative exercise. So one would be wondering that as if nothing has been done about them so far. It's not so. But what has been done is that they have served as a part of the solution. Like at some place, you must be aware that in 1960s, urban community development kind of projects have sprung up. Later on, site and services schemes have sprung up. At the same time, there are, say, slum networking kind of programs that they have come up. Also, in the recent past, there is, say, integrated, say, development programs, IHSDP, right, and which has formed the part of JNNURM. It has been there. And today we see like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, or earlier than that, say Rajiv Awas Yojana. In these all programs, probably some dimension of say the housing is been attended in a greater detail. At some places, it is more about provision of infrastructure. At another places, it is more about say uh, uh, like providing the say land for development. At another place, there's some say uh, interventions which are being say taken up for uh, mobilizing the uh, say real estate dynamics, so on and so forth. So the question arises that where we are say falling short in our say visualizing the problem. So until unless all the aspects no of the housing are attended, we cannot we will be met with limited success. Let us put it like this, right? So this is say in my view, these are some of the say control parameters which affect the affordable housing, and I'll try to explain them, but with not to a greater detail, but I will just touch upon them. Like you, when we look at the say life cycle of the residents of the slum, at the outset, no, they are people with limited education. So the kind of employment opportunities which are available to them, they are very limited. They invariably have to say be ingrained into informal sector of the economy. So occupations which are typically say available to them, they are say you can say imagine all kinds of say jobs which are say are service oriented, but they are not into the formal category. Maybe You find plumbers, you find painters, you find carpenters, you find casual laborers, you find say vegetable vendors, you find auto rickshaw drivers, drivers of varied kinds of vehicles, domestic help, and say uh, sh- like help onto the shop. These petty jobs is what they are able to secure. When such jobs are there, and when these jobs they are not organized in any form, there is always the uncertainty of say income, and therefore they land up having meager incomes. Because of these insecurity, the proximity to the workplace becomes the most important parameter for housing of the urban poor. And therefore affordable housings, they have to exist where all formal housings exist, right? They have to happen side by side simultaneously. We cannot treat them into some independent, say, kind of a parcel and throw them out of the city and l- thinking that those solutions would be accepted. So proximity to the workplace is very much important because it is the livelihood on the very first place that is very much important to them. At the same time, we find that the people who are residing into these informal neighborhoods, they have a very close social ties. ठीक है ना? Nobody comes without some kind of a place to say some reference. You can think like this. ठीक है ना? There are streams of migrant laborers. They come from certain areas. In my view, slum breeds slums. So there are certain individuals, they think that there are certain job opportunities. Along with them come other individuals who see that their say peer has been say been able to sustain. Likewise, slums are the first places for people who are say visiting or migrating into the cities in the lowest rank. And at the same time, when we see that whatever meager income that they have, what they are able to do with it, so the expenditures that happen, they are like if through their income they are able to only meet say their 2 meals requirement, or is there something which is say they are able to save? Because I told you that say job opportunities are not so streamlined for the informal sector, and therefore invariably the residents in the informal neighborhoods, they are indebted. And from where do they secure these borrowings also is a matter of great concern. So they are left with little saving, and these savings they are typically used to tide over their say jobless days. And when we look into say these say informal neighborhoods, we find that people have a different perception of what they consider quintessential, what they can say think as a their priority, uh, what they can do away with it, and what they there must be there. At the same time, these informal neighborhoods are in place because of lack of controls, right? Because uh, there is no regulation onto which they are required to abide. So they have been able to compromise upon so many other things which we considered as essential, and which otherwise also, because of say aspects of healthy living, they may be considered essential, but they have compromised that. And so there's a lack of control. They are able to build the manner in which they want. ठीक है ना? So there are no codes that apply to them. ठीक है ना? There's also say no say check on how much you can build and where you can build. Likewise, so this is lack of controls. That is what is say in a way facilitate them there. existence into the slums. Should we advocate it or we should not advocate it? That is, we have to take a call. Should we allow these kinds of things to happen? That's where we have to see. So we come to the question of how to summarize the concerns of affordable housing. So on the one hand, on the right hand side, you see that there is some demand of housing which is arising because of, say, income characteristics of the households and the perceptions and preferences of the households. And when these two things combine, they help us determine the type of the housing that we intend to plan, the quality of housing, and the quantity of housing. And at the same time, there are, say, supply side of it. And in this supply side, as the speakers previous to me must have attended, that they are talking about land, they are talking about technology, they are talking about, say, finance, maybe Hannah, and policy constraints. These are the attributes which we are required to attend. So maybe the speaker in the morning, they must have dealt in detail about like how to scale the land supply. And at the other hand, maybe the people who are dealing with, say, the climate responsiveness or some another aspects of housing, they are basically dealing with the technological aspect of it. And similarly, in the policy constraint, we can think at numerous scales. I have simply listed down two things. One is zoning laws, and the another thing is a rent control kind of a thing. See, when we have to, say, intervene as a urban planner, we have to assure that where this housing for affordable housing will exist in the urban landscape. So when we are, say, doing the master planning exercise, at that point of time, we are required to identify appropriate locations for affordable housing, because only at that point of time we are assigning land uses, and in those land uses we have identified the say job concentrations in terms of commercial development or in terms of industrial development or in terms of institutional land use, and the other say uses in terms of, say, housing. So at this point of time, if the locations of affordable housing are also identified by understanding the locational characteristics of informal neighborhoods, probably we would be better informed in identifying these locations. So as I told you earlier, that the people who are residing in informal neighborhoods, they coexist. We have to think in terms of integrating them into the mainframe rather than seeing at them as a different entity. And therefore, the locations for affordable housing would appear in places which offers maximum job opportunities of integrating informal sector economy. We will talk further down the slides, like how the other dimensions are equally, say, crucial for us. So when we look at, say, other dimension, we are saying that there is something called disposable income, right? So this disposable income is what is the, say, concern. Though, say, this study by Jones Lang LaSalle, have said that they have got say 35% of say their annual income as a disposable income, but it is very, you can say, it is not in the manner in which you and I have disposable income, because their sources are not formal. They are, say, they are daily wage earners. So they may, it may appear as a cumulative figure as 35%, but in practice, it would be much lesser than that, right? So as the income of the say households increase, at along with that, their disposable incomes that also increase. But at the right hand side graph that you see, that there is some demand of housing in the income group, which is the lowest income group of which we are targeting. So there is a huge demand, but then supply gap is equally huge. On the other end of the spectrum, the demand is not huge, but the supply is huge. So this has uh, turned out to be as a very kind of a stagnating situation when we look at the market, where they have built housing, but then there are no buyers for them. On the other hand, there is a say dire need of housing, but then there are no suppliers to them. So what we can say, summarize in terms of the urban poor, is that they have minimal educational qualification, they are employed into informal sector, their earnings are significantly low, and therefore they choose to stay as close as possible to their sources of work. And these people, they retain very traditional characteristics of rural life, and much of their say income is spent in meeting their requirements of say meals, and followed by social commitments, right? So wherever there are gaps into say their income and the requirement of and their expenditure requirements, they bridge it through borrowing from informal sources, which are, you can see that first they access relatives, friends, or employers and shopkeepers, like that. So amongst this, you could find that still saving is a they demonstrate saving propensity, but they are not able to save more than 20% of their monthly income. So this is based upon say studies that we have conducted in, say, at least say, two cities, one in Indore and another one in Jaipur. This is a general kind of a finding that we have come across. So the other thing is that key physical and social infrastructure near unattended public vacant lands, no, that is what is, say, one of the reasons of say proliferation of informal housing. And coupled with it, there are lack of controls, and that's why they can, say, proliferate onto those locations. So what are their housing aspirations? I have given you the reference of all the time of informal neighborhoods because the demand for affordable housing arises from these quarters only. And when we examine the housing aspirations of people who are residing in these informal neighborhoods, we find that 60% of them, they wish to continue at their present locations. Now that is huge numbers. So as an outsider, when we think independently of any kind of a feedback from say studies which are done in these neighborhoods, we tend to think that all of them, they require housing, ठीक है ना? And therefore we must provide housing for them. And the typical response is, as we have said, that maybe scaling the housing supply through, say, formal channels. But much of it can be attended if we attend the existing housing stock where it exists. So only 40% of the households know those who reside in these neighborhoods, they wish to move out. Now, this choice depends very much upon that at what scale of development continuum they are. So there are people who have, say, been into the city in these places only for say 2 to 5 years, whereas there are other places where they have been residing more than say 25 years. And even further places, you may find that there are these some say informal neighborhood pockets which are say more than 25-30 years old, right? So the more matured an informal neighborhood, there is a uh, increased insistence on say residing where they are residing right now. Means they wish not to move from those places. Then further, when we look at that, what they can do, that they can say spare say one third of their total household income towards it, which comes closer to that 30% or 35% mark that they have said, 30% to 40%. This is say closer to that figure. And there are the people who are not willing to move outside. uh, there are majority of them, they are willing to spend on upgrading their housing stock. So in terms of say choice of construction method, they are willing to contribute through labor. At the same time, when we look at say what choices they are making in housing improvement, so the things that they want to do is that first they want to attend the structural improvement of the house, then followed by they may choose say better materials on a future date, but at very first they want to make it structurally safe. And we would be surprised to know that they they are more in need of drinking water and electricity as compared to toilet and say other facilities that we consider as essential services. Like when we survey such neighborhoods, we find that roads, public amenities, etc., they are out of their say choices. They may wait for it. They may want to wait for it, but those are few things which are first being attended. Then followed by, you can think of that there are two kinds of say as we look into the above diagram. So financing is also say one of the constraints. uh, this has been attended by say formulation of affordable housing policies, and then the formulation of say certain fiscal say incentives. Likewise, this has been attended. And uh, so what we see is that the question is that the way they earn, the way they save, that is very, you can say, incremental. They are daily wage earners, and the EMIs and any kind of a loan repayment, it happens en bloc in one day at some point of time. So how we say attend their this requirement, where they should be able to say uh, able to repay in smaller increments, and then say some microfinancing kind of arrangements, wherein smaller loans are processed, and there must be some arrangement of say recollecting these loans on a very, you can say, uh, geared towards their say repayment methods, right? because typically in a say when we say access loan through banks, they want to ensure our credit worthiness. They also want to be assured of uh, the collateral against which we are say seeking loan. Also they are analyzing our repayment capacities and so on and so forth. But the urban poor fall short on these parameters. So we have to tailor-made something pertaining to these aspects, and then evolve innovative methods of financing the housing for them. When we look into affordable housing policies, what do we find is that uh, fine, say there is some cost of construction of which certain part is being say taken care of by the government. The housing stock that has been built by the say uh, private developer, that is bought by some nodal agency, and it is say forwarded to the intended beneficiary, uh, and this beneficiary is say offered loan with very lowered interest rate, and that is all has been done, right? But still, if we are not able to say increase the ownership of housing, then there is some say missing link in the process. So uh, now I will try to say skip through few more slides at a little faster pace. So in looking at the say attributes of that affordable housing, the one of the issues is that increasing construction costs, right? And then the financing channels, which are say intended for a specific group. Then we can see that the formal channels, they have not attended the smaller say amounts. They are more interested in disbursing higher packets. This is some say you can say is a institutional arrangement. It is geared towards the government setup, wherein we find that there are varied kinds of financial institutions. There are commercial banks, and then there are other institutions. So when say these seek synergies, now we understand that RBI have put up some conditions on say commercial banks to disburse a certain share of their loans for say affordable housing or the uh, lower income groups. Similarly, there are certain say caps which are being put on say other financing institutions. So there are certain developments in this direction, and we can now see that these developments, they tell us that there is a paradigm shift from say provider to a supporter paradigm, because you can figure out that though in absolute terms we may find that more of the investment is being made in housing, but in real terms when you look at share of say budget allocated for housing, it is diminishing. The the area of say our interventions is also in the realm of regulatory constraints. There's a typical example wherein say one of my friends, he has opted to do the affordable housing, but then for the first 2 years he simply had to wait for approval of the project, right? So the turnaround time of a project has significantly increased for him, and it is say 5 years, and he's not been able to dispose of all the housing that was intended. He was constructing, say, affordable housing for some 2,500 households. So whatever is being presented in this diagram, it is say actually happening in the real world also. And then also, like what incentives do we give to say developers if we want to say tap the market potential? This invariably falls under the category of enhancing the FAR, and then also rationalizing various fees and taxes. Typically in Rajasthan, for say housing that has been bought from a developer or colonizer, you are required to pay something around 5% of GST, 1% of TCS, and some say stamp duty on say developer agreement that is there. So it boils down to something around cost enhancements to the tune of say 35%. So we at one end, when we are thinking of a say some kind of a housing as a product, and the end user say taking this product, intermediate solution is that of rental housing that is also being attended recently. And you have say rental housing policy for India. Here you can see that again there are three main groups. There are enablers, there are providers, and then there are executors into scaling the housing supply. So there are some push and pull factors which now have say prompted the real estate market to think about affordable housing. And these are in terms of as I told you through those say graphs, that at one end the housing market for the higher income groups is saturated, so they see opportunity in terms of say affordable housing. And there are say you can see that there are not enough say land parcels of substantial size which can be developed as say group housing, and therefore within the core city, and therefore they are required to move to a far-flung suburban location. And at the same time, the government policy regime is say favorable to say promote affordable housing, so that these things are say pushing. And at the other end you can see that there are say vast economies of scale when say developing a housing for say something around 100 200 houses, to developing say as I told you just now something around 2000 2500 houses. And so there's more number of buyers, and that in a same duration of time you may maximize your profit. These are the some of the opportunities that are being say visualized by the real estate market, and that's why they are prompted to think about say providing affordable housing. But these say affordable housing projects, they are typically say 30 kilometers away from the cities. These are some of the cities uh, where these affordable housing are located. Uh, and when this JLL study, they found that these projects are typically situated farther than 30 kilometers. Bigger the city, further the distance, and therefore even more increased need for effective transportation system, as must have been attended by Dr. Pawan Kumar. He must have highlighted the importance of public transportation system. So that becomes even more crucial. The reverse corollary is this, that if our transportation systems are effectively planned, and if so we can think of say affordable housing sites at a greater distance. So a summary of say affordable housing projects in Indian metropolitan cities uh, appears like this, that they are typically beyond 25 to 30 kilometers from the city center, and Industrial zones, commercial hubs, and suburban nodes are the places where they would develop these housing. And typically, the project size is that of say 1,500 or 3,000 units, and with the dwelling unit density of 80 to 100 units per acre. And typical land parcel size varies from 15 to 35 acres. The typology of say housing that they are say promoting is one room kitchen or one bedroom hall kitchen or two bedroom hall kitchen. That is say on say from the lowest quintile to the say little higher gradient. So from EWS to LIG to say lower middle income group, this is what is the composition. And as it has been advocated into affordable housing policy, accordingly, say they are catering to that much kind of a carpet area. And this say ranges between say the lowest from 5 to 7 lakhs and followed by say 400, 500 square foot of a space, in something around 7 to 10 lakhs of rupees. So a typical say cost, which is say comes out to be something around 1,800 to 3,000 rupees per square foot. What it ought to be, how much is the variance, and who will bridge this gap is what is the question. So like in affordable housing policy of Rajasthan state, what do we find is that they have say they have frozen the construction cost at say 1,750 rupees per square foot, of which 750 rupees per square foot would be borne by the government, and 1,000 rupees per square foot is what would be charged from the beneficiary. And then this loan, this house is say forwarded on loan, on which there is a 5% subsidy on interest rate. So this is how these are the things which are attended in case of say scaling the housing supply. So there's this kind of a setup wherein there are joint development agreements. So they have come up as models of say affordable housing. There are two kinds of say housing so that would happen, that there would be affordable housing on public land, and that which would be constructed by a private developer, or there would be affordable housing on the private land and constructed by the private developer. So these are some permutations and combinations of these opportunities where how the housing is being attended, affordable housing is being attended. Then what is intended is that if you want to say improve the say involvement of private sector into scaling the affordable housing supply, then we have to remove those say regulatory barriers, the permissions and likewise, which we have to attend them, and this time has to be brought down to years time. Like one has to say the turnaround time of a project should be within say a year, and finding ways to lower the cost of construction. And also when we say low ticket sizes, like the price of the housing, it, it is very it has to be within a very small range. Like it cannot be say costlier than say 10 lakhs, right? As of say what has been advocated say maybe 5 to 6 years ago. So one of the options are in terms of wherever the slums exist, we should think about it and say try to improve the housing stock within those areas, either through redevelopment or resettlement. There are models which were advocated in say Rajiv Awas Yojana, and where they identify that each slum has to be attended differently, and therefore there are say slum say pockets which are near to the say commercial establishments. So there is a opportunity to tap the say market dynamics. On the other end of the scale, there would be certain places which are say can be upgraded by integration of infrastructure alone. At some another place, it was say altogether redevelopment. So there are various models which exist into say the policy documents prior to say what has been practiced today in Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. So when private players have to be attended, then we have to think about their interest as to how they can say uh, bear the cost. What are the alternatives for them to bear the cost and say see a business opportunity? So through this, say through transfer of development rights, the additional FAR has been what is admissible and has been transferred from a high density area to a relatively low density area. This kind of a say intervention has been practiced in Rajasthan very much, and there are say some studies which are some examples which also tell us that any of those say mega cities or other metropolitan cities, this say concept has been gaining weightage. Then say in terms of public private partnership, it is now as I spoken to you say little earlier, that how is it the win-win situation for the stakeholders into it. More the rational and better the acceptability of the PPP model. So the issues that spring up into these kinds of say PPP models is that where to how to select the location of the site and how to identify the beneficiaries. So and how to ascertain the demand for housing. So these are some of the concerns that spring up. Also, like what are the say ways in which the project finance or the housing finance is say promoted, and is there if there exists some mechanism wherein say the capital which has been say sourced for affordable housing project is available to the developer at a say lowered rate as compared to the say the loans that are being taken by say developers to promote their group housing otherwise. So we come down to that we have to attend the aspect of supply of land, wherein we are required to remove the constraint such as uh, concentration of land, then our say cadastral system to attend the land use regulations and some institutional structures to promote accessibility to available land. Also, as I told you that they exist, say, symbiotically. So wherever there is, say, large-scale housing projects in the formal sector, one has to identify the, say, housing, affordable housing in those locations itself. So you have seen that when the market persists, they also try to locate the affordable housing closer to major work centers. In terms of say planning and design, we have to revisit our thoughts about say the minimum space requirements that we have advocated, and amongst the housing typology solutions, which one of them are more acceptable. And infrastructure facilities in terms of like there are so many things that are required to be done in terms of what we considered as a norm. Like if we look into the township policy of Rajasthan state, we find that say like one of the norm is say no road is say lesser than 9-meter right of way. But when we are having the housing, affordable housing, and then typical, say, lot sizes which are there for them, say, something around 45 square meters. then probably this regulation is what must be revisited. Similarly, the provision of green spaces, how much we are advocating in, say, subdivision regulations, and what we are advocating for, say, affordable housing. So every state would have, say, its own, say, land subdivision regulations. So certain amendments may be required in these regulations to attend the typical housing requirement of the urban poor. So further followed by, like, it is more about like how to say help them to have land at subsidized rate, or in terms of the floor space that we are committing to them, and how we are, say, checking the say uh, land speculation, hoarding of land, that is probably through, say, high tax on vacant land, and then some strategic planning in terms of land use, wherein the residential land use, we typically do not integrate residential land use with, say, uh, industrial land use. But then when we look closer, then we find that they invariably are very closer to these industrial establishments. Then why not, say, advocate, say, the policy for, say, some kind of an integrated township, wherein when the industrial estates are being planned, at the same time the housing for the industrial workers, or say casual workers, are also attended at that point of time. And then there can be provision of reservation of land, at least here, say in our state and probably in Madhya Pradesh. They have some statute which says that 15% of the developed land is required to be, say, reserved for the affordable housing. Similarly, in the cost of construction, besides the inputs that go into constructing the house, uh, in terms of materials, there is labor, which is also one of the important constituents. And many of the, say, communities within this informal neighborhoods, they have come forward to, say, self-help methods. So on the one end, we can, say, enhance the skill set of the people who are involved into construction industry and working as, say, masons or laborers in the construction industry. And at the same time, we can forge the community synergy to scale the housing supply. Similarly, in case of, say, employment, as I told you, that key, what those, say, back offices kind of things, no, that are happening, like the clothes that we are wearing, probably they are stitched in slums, right? So the shoes that we are wearing, as a part of that, is coming to from the slum. And anything that we see into our living environment, something is being contributed uh, as a labor in the informal sector. And therefore there is some need to integrate this, say, livelihood opportunities within, say, affordable housing. That will make it more, say, acceptable. Here it has been attended, and probably there are, say, targeted subsidies at various levels. So we also have talked about legal and regulatory framework. Also in terms of fiscal measures, as we told that key, which one of them is probably, it is, say, exempted from some kind of a tax, or what is, say, can be deferred in terms of, say, interest rates, or in terms of, say, indirectly, say, compensating for promoting housing for the urban poor. So we can see that there are, say, different aspects to the, say, development of affordable housing, and all of them, when brought together, have to be put into an integrated perspective. And when we say perceive affordable housing as a part of an urban system, and then attending to the various, say, parts of this affordable housing, because what we are doing is that probably we are attempting one aspect at one particular place, but it is maybe all the things may be required to attend at the same place. So there would be people who would be, say, thinking in alternatives to say housing typology. There are people within the same say mix which are placed at a different say stage of development. So there must be some choices which are available to us to serve their needs. So rather than, so it is more of a dynamic entity. Our perspective when changes, probably our solutions change. So thank you very much for patience hearing. uh, now I invite say your queries, please. Is it full screen? Okay.
Thank you, sir. Uh, Now we can have the Q&A session. I request all of you to please, if you have any queries or questions. Sir, it's a question from Benny, sir. Benny
Yeah.
Kurian, sir. The slum dweller is willing to wait for toilets and services to reach them. How
Yeah.
about attend to their needs, which turn out to be more of a formal dweller's need by providing them large tube or semi-tube houses? How does one go about novel ideas of housing proposals? And which agencies do we convince with budget proposal studies?
Sorry. I missed some of it.
Yeah, I'll just go one by one, sir. I think two, three questions are there together.
Yeah. Please, I missed the half part of your question. Actually.
I'm sorry, sir. I'll repeat it again. The slum dweller is willing to wait for toilets and services to reach them.
Hmm.
How about attend to their needs, which turn out to be more of the formal dweller's need by providing them large tube or semi-tube houses?
Sir, actually, when we are seeking housing solutions for them through a government intermediary, then there are, say, resistances to novel ideas. But if we find that there is some, say, community, and we are going into the community and trying to force solutions there, maybe then they are attended. When I say that they are willing to wait for this, say, toilets or some like this services, it means that uh, they don't see it as a personalized kind of a requirement. There exists a requirement, but then it can be attended collectively. So one can economize upon, because they are at various, say, stages, no? So those who are, say, recently been part of, say, these informal neighborhoods, they cannot think of, and therefore for some temporary arrangements or some makeshift arrangements are necessary. But when those few who are, say, have spent, say, at least say 10 to 20 years of time, maybe they are looking at some collective facilities, and even further, say, they are thinking of their individual houses. So now we have to force these solutions case specific. I could understand it like this only. I don't know if I say satisfied your query or not. but this is what my understanding is.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I could understand. I could agree with the solution. But some of these ideas, how do we take it about so that which agencies do we approach and implement an idea wherein tubes, which may be more or less a few, parabolic, this could also be used as a drainage facility, so these kinds of tubes can be stacked one on top of the other in case it has to be made more permanent. So such ideas, how do we make, which are the agencies we approach to make these things more practical?
Sir, in a formal setup, there are say two institutions which are involved locally actually. One, we find say housing boards in every state, and the other thing that we find is say development authorities in say every city, maybe metropolitan city. In between them, there are some these local bodies. So local bodies will have to attend it, like any of the municipal corporations, municipalities. So we have to access them and convince them with the solutions which can be practiced, because it falls under their domain, their responsibility at the first place.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sir, the next question is, what is the lifespan of affordable housing?
That is difficult to answer. Difficult to answer in the sense that it will depend upon how this affordable housing is managed and who is providing the affordable housing. If people are providing for themselves, they will take care of it for a longer period of time. So it is my view that if rather than providing them, say, an apartment, if we are, say, accommodating them onto a piece of land, then their incremental housing requirements would be met for a longer period of time, and probably it may serve uh, its useful life. Whereas if it would be provided as in the form of apartments, then it will have a less useful life, because it would require a setup where these buildings are maintained and the incremental requirement of these people are say met. So that is where the uh, answer is. Did I help you in sorting out it, or it is not
Yes,
okay?
sir. This is from Lakshmi Prasad, sir. Again, the same. He's asking approximately what is the lifespan? Like if you can give a number, maybe.
Sir, if we say we can compare it with the say a very nicely maintained kind of a building, ठीक है ना? Say apartment, which turns out to be something around 50 years. So maybe 50 years is the turnaround time when the housing stock is dilapidated and it has to be say redeveloped again. You may find some of the cases where the group housing or being practiced quite early, maybe in case of Mumbai, maybe say these bigger cities. So you can see that do you find housing stock which is say pre-independent era is still existing there? Because there were also say chawls or these kinds of arrangements were say some kind of a way to attain affordable housing way back.
That's a very good answer. Thank you, sir. 50 years, and then some of them still from pre-independent era means maybe it goes to 70, 80 years. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for a wonderful session. I think housing is a topic which we all can closely relate to. So I think it was a really nice topic to go with a lot of information. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to be with you and say interact with say distinguished speakers as well as so many participants. I am equally thankful. Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a nice day.
Beautiful. I request all of you to please switch on your cameras for the screenshot.
I think Anjali ma'am wants to raise some query.
Yes, sir, we can go ahead with that.
Yeah, Anjali ma'am, you're welcome, please.
I'm sorry to kind of extend this discussion a bit, but it was very interesting. Actually, when you spoke about actually, the process by which participation or forging community synergies, when you actually said that, I think, yes, designers can actually shift their, extend their focus from designing into some kind of catalyst or integrators actually. But sir, is it possible that this process be made mandatory into the developmental development process or these kind of projects where at least some kind of a validity to the designer's role, because we are very sensitive to kind of understanding how the people or systems function, or how they interact with their environment. But there is no way where that validity comes in, that yes, it is mandatory to go about this process where you have that dialogue with the user.
There are precedences. There are precedences to say involve community and a set out procedure. Say to think about say scaling the housing supply. If you have heard of say Million House program of Sri Lanka, or if you have say heard of say Kampung improvement program, if you come across these programs, you would find that community participation is an integral part of decision making. So the solutions that are being proposed have to be ratified through the community in these kinds of examples. And I would suggest that you can access the literature reference. It is Housing Without Houses by Nabil Hamidi. It is a book which is published from MIT Press. And this book influenced the housing perspective way back, say something around 2001. Now it's more than 20 years old. So.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for this. Sir, also, there was one more thing that, I mean, housing is one aspect. There are many such aspects we would understand it as systems, like systems
Right.
that.
Right.
So, what kind of process can facilitate these, observational studies or some kind of interdisciplinary studies which can be roped into informing the local agencies? Like, yes, we can approach the local bodies, but isn't it more a part of activism? As an individual or as a small practicing firm, it becomes very difficult to where to start and how to kind of go further with this.
Ma'am, like you have come, like the starting point can be those say NGOs who are working into say slums, right? You must have heard of some Seva organization. Did you come across that?
So actually, not particularly Seva, but yes, I kind of got your point.
Hana. So there are NGOs who are say operative and they are attending to other aspects of development. Maybe they are working on to community development, or they are working on women empowerment, or they are working on livelihood. So when we reach these forums, and when we reach these say organizations, we can with our our skill set can help say forge a greater synergy, and we can say start from there and then moving into the communities and trying to understand their requirements, and then say proposing solutions. So that is say community based organizations and NGOs are the link from where we can start.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you, sir. As we come to the end of today's session, I would like to call upon Architect Benny Kurian, sir, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening to one and all. I wish to thank the convener of this event, Dr. Navneet Munot, the eminent speakers and the participants. I consider it a matter of honor to be presenting the vote of thanks to the distinguished speakers of the day. My special thanks to architect Kirti Sahu for sharing his valuable experiences in the field of green features in affordable housing. On behalf of the audience and the organizers, I wish to thank Dr. Satish Pipralia for his inspiring talks on alternative approaches to affordable housing. The speakers have spared their valuable time for us. We wish to express our sincere thanks to you, respected architect and professor, for the immense, immeasurable effort and time that you have spared for us. I'm sure the audience have been enriched by the valuable experiences shared by the eminent speakers. Thank you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Before ending the session, I would like to brief about the talks for the day 4 sessions of the FDP program, that is tomorrow. Tomorrow we will have a talk by architect Ashwin Panikar on sustainable transportation and architects, zooming into micro from a macro perspective for the session 1. For the session 2, we will have a talk by Dr. Aanchal Sharma on enhancing buildings thermal in the of Uttarakhand through native green roofing retrofitting systems. Thank you all once again. We shall wind up for the session for today. Have a good evening, all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.